under the Indian Act for almost 100 years. It was illegal for Indigenous people, two or more in a crowd, in a gathering, to come together. So it's never lost on me when we are able to come together and build and join and build bridges together, because we would have been jailed for this not that long ago. And so on this very nice night, we were lucky not to have rain, and even if there was rain, that wouldn't matter for this very important individual. So remembering Professor Saibaba, tonight we should also remember the land under our feet. So I raise my hands in thanks and say Hajko Siem to the Kwantlen, the Semiamu, and the Katesi people. Sorry. Different parts of Surrey, we acknowledge different families of Coast Salish people, but so for us to be able to have the freedom here to gather tonight to express our voices in remembrance of someone who fought for those who didn't have a voice, we're very grateful. So I'd like to thank the Coast Salish families for allowing us to gather on their traditional unceded ancestral territory tonight. Unceded means to never give up, and that's a really good theme of what we're doing here today. So in remembering Professor Saibaba, I have thought a lot about him, and not just today. And when I think of him, the hummingbird teaching comes to mind that I have. And there are over 600 First Nations in Canada alone, and there are almost 1,500 across Turtle Island. So we are diverse, we are unique, just like India is very multicultural and diverse. And there are unique peoples from region to region, but we do have things in common. And we have things in common with other people across the seas as well. And I just think of hummingbird teaching that I have, so it may be told differently in other cultures. Every culture has its beliefs around animals, insects, birds, and what they represent. But a beautiful teaching that I have with the hummingbird comes from a story in which a forest fire had ignited, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew. And the fire got so large it was threatening to wipe out everything as far as the eye could see. And the animals started panicking. And Bear, their chief, said, "Okay, squirrels, you go get a mouthful of water. Coyote, you go get a mouthful of water. Bear, go get paws full and a mouthful of water." And Bear had everyone within that ecosystem, everything that was sentient and that could move on its own, everything. So the insects, the birds, the animals, had them go get mouthfuls or paws full of water and to go back and forth like a giant relay, back and forth to the forest fire. And they were doing this, and it wasn't making much of a dent at all. It wasn't making much of a difference. And at one point, he was running to the river to get more water, and Coyote looked up and saw a hummingbird. And there was a little hummingbird with one drop of water on her beak. And she started laughing at her and saying, "What are you doing? You think you're really going to be effective with that one drop of water? You think you're going to put this fire out? You think you're going to be of any help to us?" And Hummingbird looked down and just said, "I'm doing what I can," and kept going. And the next run that Hummingbird did, dropped it onto the fire. Creator saw this and extinguished the entire fire with her one droplet of water. So when I was thinking of Professor Saibaba and thinking of this story, I thought, oh my gosh, there are so many beautiful lessons and parallels of his life and his work to come out of this. So the first one being selflessness. So here was someone who was born into poverty, right? What we would call disabled, I don't like that word, physically challenged, from something that had nothing to do with anything. It was just a fluke, right? Getting polio, and then from as a small child, so he was confined, physically confined for, almost all of his life. And Hummingbird was maybe confined a little bit in some ways by her size, not being taken seriously, or people thinking, or animals thinking she could make a difference. And the selflessness that you have to be able to survive in prison, fighting for someone other than yourself and people other than yourself, is so profoundly huge. And Hummingbird was selfless. She could have said, okay, fine, you're going to bully me, do it yourself, figure it out. But she didn't, because she knew that fighting for one was going to make things better for everyone. And she knew that she had to work as a very, maybe small, but very, very integral part of that symbiotic relationship that is creation, in order to save creation. And Saibaba, it's often the bullied or the persecuted that are, I find, or from what I know, I don't know for what it's worth, the most enlightened and peaceful people. Usually those people throughout history are the ones that have been slammed the most with persecution or other other things in life where people have just tried to knock them down and they can't be knocked down. So to be that selfless, to fight for others, and fighting for Indigenous Indians people's rights, that alone we have in common, and our histories we have in common. So it's a symbiotic relationship, it's a reciprocal relationship we have. So he was an example of that. You take care of other people, you fight for the people who may not have a voice or who are not heard. His PhD dissertation, focused on, in literature, those that had been shut out from being heard. So I'm just very grateful for the selflessness that he had, the enlightenment he had, and the power to keep going. Because I don't know how many people confined to a wheelchair and harsh conditions in prison could survive for that long. But he did it. And he didn't do it for himself. He did it for his fellow man. So I'm really honored to have been asked just to join you in remembering this great man.
Thank you, Jennifer.